Hi guys, welcome to the first session of a new workshop for this year. We're going to be drawing this broken shell that I've got. It's one of the objects in my studio. And I'm going to be working in pencil, so graphite, and carbon pencil as well, so more of a charcoal based pencil. We won't be using the charcoal today because that's something we're going to be doing to kind of build depth into the darker tones in the subject and getting some smudginess and so on. Today we're just going to be starting to block the shell in. So as always, we're going to go for today. Our kind of main focus is just going to be to try to establish. It's going to be quite large. You can see I've made it fairly wide on my paper, kind of like a pencil width across. Going to try to establish just the kind of big general shape, kind of basically sketching in the general shape of the shell. It's got this little curved bottom down on the right. We've got our curved top up here. And using curves a little bit more with this one than some other tutorials on the on our YouTube channel. Just because it is sort of a primarily kind of curved based subject list, so logically makes sense to use curves. Sometimes it's good, like we might do a little bit of breaking down with straight lines here and there, but initially to get this sort of gesture, we'll call it the gesture of the little bit of erasing if anything doesn't seem quite right. Obviously it's always okay to erase. We've got this sort of like an S shape, this little bit that juts out because it's broken. That's this shape. Sort of specific way that it snapped. And then from there we've got starting to get sort of overlapping forms. So we've got this bit here where it's snapped and it curves back down. So you can start to see this sort of, obviously the spiral is quite central to the sort of compositional aspect of the drawing. So yeah, that's not too bad as a initial block in. Also want to start now just getting in a sense of where the cast shadows are going to go. So we've got the shadow on the ground. I think what I'm going to do when we actually get to fully drawing out the shadows is I'm going to sort of soften it, sort of smudge it more than it is in the reference. I'm going to play around a little bit with the quality of the reference. We've also got these little internal shadows which are worth popping in pretty early. And I can also start now to look for some of the form shadows on the shell as well. So we've got this slightly darker little shape where it where it goes more blue, the colour of it. You can see I'm working really lightly, so all of this is very sketchy. We're going to be building the drawing up a lot over the top of this. So we're going to be really kind of knocking back the values quite strongly, ultimately. Let's put this one as well, this little shadow. And so from there, I'm fairly happy now, I think, generally with the shapes. I'm going to go through and just kind of crispen things up a little bit. I'll zoom in slightly, actually, as well. Should I adjust the direction of my camera a little bit? So yeah, I just want to go in and be a bit more specific. So I'm working over the sort of slightly fuzzier lines that I originally had laid down, just a little bit sharper, a little bit crisper. Still not super dark, obviously, as I say. This is only an HB I'm using. And I'll get back to, I got slightly distracted, I'll go back to just doing this outlining. Just going to redo that curve, I didn't quite get it how I wanted. Slightly broader curve than I put in. a bit better. So drop back down to this lower portion of the shell. And there's ultimately going to be a lot of quite delicate rendering going on, or shading. This little overlap here as well. So you can see it's a pretty simple process. It's nothing too complex. If you need to take measurements, if you want to, you can do that sort of stuff as well. But this kind of like tentative sketching in, and then gradually building details is always a good approach. Keeps everything loose before you decide you need to go kind of tighter with it, before you're confident. It's basically once you're confident you can start to go more precise with it. And just starting to put a little bit of kind of like shading amount and embellishing slightly from the actual subject. Just making a bit of a shape adjustment there, pushing this bit of the shell out a little bit. If ever you see anything that you want to correct, always make the correction. Especially this early on in a drawing, it's always good to correct. Partly we just want to make sure we get the right kind of sense of those curves is what's really important. Yes, that's pretty good I think for the shadows. Maybe a little bit, can emphasize them a little bit more. This one up here, but we're going to be defining these a great deal more in the next few sessions. So the last thing I'm going to do is just put a little bit of kind of like suggested shading, maybe lighter shading across the halftones. So just starting to give a little bit of a sense of in what way the parts of the shell that are receiving direct light, how they're actually functioning. got this kind of reflection coming down from the top, so that's why I've got where it starts to kind of be a little bit darker, and then shade down actually comes from a little bit inside that top edge. Yeah, then maybe a little bit of kind of softening out. As I say, I think the shadows I'm gonna keep softer than they are in the reference. A little bit harsh, the light, that there's an artificial light because it's quite dark here at this time of year. So we can kind of go in and just yeah, and I think that's pretty good for this session. So you saw how it all worked, but we got the kind of basic shape of the shell locked in, just did a line drawing, put some shadow shapes in, then went back and kind of crisped things up a bit. Once the crispening was done, we sort of did a little bit of starting to think about how the other forms are going to be turning. A lot of our time with this one is going to be spent kind of trying to get the shine in the center of the shell. And some of these other reflections. That's sort of the interesting thing about the form, but the actual shape of it is also like super nice, so should be quite a nice one to work with. The reference you can download yourself. There's a link in the description here on YouTube, and you can, as always, subscribe to the channel so that you can keep up to date with all the different videos that we're adding, and you can also click the link through to OCAD to see what sorts of qualifications, the proper qualified courses we offer. But yeah, that's it for today, and I'll see you guys soon.